Discussion on quite a nice paper which is done by one of the eminent groups in the United Kingdom with very high success rates. And what they looked at is oocyte maturity influenced by ovulation trigger in oocyte donation cycles. They looked at having a large number of women who had coming in for egg donation who had either a GnRh analog trigger or a dual trigger, which is 2500 HCG and a GnRh analog, or they had HCG 10,000 as a trigger. And when you had a look at these cases, in short, and I'm going to summarize, is what gave the highest number of oocytes, and it was the dual trigger. But when you looked at the number of mature oocytes, there was no statistical difference between the GnRh analog trigger, the dual trigger, and the HCG trigger. And this is where the importance lies. Now, when you look at many studies, mainly done on poor responders, it seems that given a dual trigger seems to increase the number of mature oocytes. This study did not show that. And that is something which is quite interesting from the study. There were about 333 cycles, out of which 69% received GnRh analog trigger, 17.7% had a dual trigger, 42% of which is 12.6% had an HCG trigger. Now, if you looked at the ovarian hyperstimulation rate, the hyperstimulation rate in the analog trigger was 0.4%, in the HCG trigger was none, which means very carefully selected cases, and that's important. But in the dual trigger was 8.5%, and that is significantly higher than both the other groups. So what does this study tell us is that in the case of women with a good reserve and where the risk of overhyperstimulation may be possible, then an analog trigger would be quite useful. But on the other hand, if you are aiming to do a dual trigger, that dual trigger comes with a risk of overstimulation without a benefit on the number of mature oocytes obtained. Now, in egg donation cycles, that's my personal belief, as long as you are looking at an estrogen levels which is less than 10,000, I don't think we should be looking towards giving a dual trigger. I quite certainly believe that giving an HCG trigger in lower follicle numbers is reasonable, while if you're going to give an dual trigger, then do it very carefully, looking at your estrogen levels as well as your follicle count. And for that reason, I would suggest this is quite an interesting paper, mainly because taking dual trigger that casually, considering that it changes the number of mature oocytes, the study did not really demonstrate it, but it increased the risk of ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. Thank you very much.